States. I'm English, so my talk is going to be in English. I apologize for those of you who only speak Spanish, but what we'll do is, I know poquito Espanol, but what we'll do is, if we can do some translating. My friend here, Gonzalo, will do any translating. So if there's anything that you guys don't understand, and you just raise your hand. Just raise your hand. Hello. Raise your hand if you don't understand a phrase or something, and Gonzalo will stop and Gonzalo will translate for us. So how about that? Okay, so is there anything you don't get? No, I want you to be able to get it all. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start by showing this cartoon that I did a number of years ago, and let's go ahead.
I like to play baseball and click stamps and swim. I'm like any other 8-year-old except for one thing. I was born without a nose. My parents say they don't know why, that maybe they're being punished for something they did when they were young. The bigger kids in school always laugh and make fun of me just because I'm different. They say I'm afraid. I always feel left out in the winter when the other kids get colds and stuffy noses. I need glasses, but I can't wear them because they fall off my face. I have dreams at night where noses come to me. Sometimes at night, when everyone else is asleep, I look at the sky and wonder, why did this have to happen to me? You know, it's funny how things can work out sometimes. I still wish I had a nose though.
Thank you very much. So that was an animated short that I did called Simon, and I did that film my last year at CalArts, my second year, and that film was sort of my entree into the animation industry. That film got me hired by Disney in their story department and was sort of my entree and my entrance into the animation industry. As Alejandro has introduced me, my name is Robert Lence. I live in Los Angeles, California. I'm here as the guest of ORT University. For the next 4 months, I'm here guest teaching at ORT. And my entire career has been in animation. I've worked for 24 years in the animation industry. I've worked primarily in the story department. My whole career has been in story. I've worked as a storyboard artist, a screenwriter, a head of story, and a visual development artist. I've worked on 10 Diez major release animated features, films that you've probably seen and enjoyed. Let me see if I know the Spanish titles: La Bella y la Bestia, Toy Story, Bichos, Shrek, El Rey León. I've worked for just about every studio in Hollywood, I think. I've worked at Disney for muchos años. I've worked at Pixar, DreamWorks, and just about every place in Hollywood in between that you could mention. I'm also a writer. I'm in the Writers Guild. I have writing credits on some Disney and Pixar films too, and also am a screenwriter. I've worked all over the world, really. I've worked in New York, I've worked in San Francisco, London, Los Angeles, and now here in Uruguay too. Back in March, I went with my friend Alejandro, and he took me to Estadio Centenario, and I saw Paul McCartney, the great Beatle, Paul McCartney, give this great concert. Paul McCartney was always a childhood idol of mine. And in that concert, he sang many great songs. He did a wonderful tribute to John Lennon, did a wonderful tribute to George Harrison. But one of the highlights for me, he sang one of my favorite songs, The Long and Winding Road. I'm not sure what the Spanish title is, but I'm sure you guys know the song, right? The long and winding road that leads to your door. You guys know the song, right? Come on, stop. So if I look back at my life and career, that is what the story of my life is. It has been a long and winding road in my career in animation. The road for me began in New York City. Yo soy Nueva York. I was born and raised in New York. The son of Italian immigrant parents. My grandparents both came over from Italy and settled in New York. And so my Italian heritage is very important to me and a big part of my life too. And my father was a very interesting man. He started off in the dress business in New York, and then he moved into boxing. He became actually like a famous boxing promoter, and in his day he was a famous man. He was on TV and in newspapers and movies. He was a muy famoso boxeo promoter. From there he also was an entrepreneur and had a whole string of bowling alleys. He was a great entrepreneur. For me as a kid, I'm probably like a lot of you are in that I was always drawing. I was always drawing as a kid. And my father would almost, my dad would say to me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I say, I want to be an artist. I want to be a cartoonist. And he'd go, Robert, you don't want to do that. You go, that's a tough road. You don't want to do that. He almost discouraged me from getting on that road because he knew it was a tough road. My father was a child of the Depression, the Great Depression in the 1930s, and it was a very low economic time in the United States. So having grown up in that, he saw that the first thing that people cut in a tough economic time is the art. So he knew, Robert, if you want to do this, this is going to be a tough road. It's going to be a hard thing for you to do. But I couldn't keep from doing what I love to do. And like probably a lot of you guys, I was always drawing as a kid. I was always copying out of the Disney books or Mad Magazine. You guys had Mad Magazine in Uruguay? No? It was like a cartoonist magazine. I always used to copy out of that too. You guys with me? You're understanding? Okay. Just like I said, raise your hand when you're done. So, always drawing as a kid, but, you know, I had to do my regular schoolwork like you guys too, so I go to school and study math and science and everything. But every day I'd race home after school to watch cartoons, to watch those great old Warner Brothers cartoons. I'm so glad I did, because that was more, for me, that was almost like more of an education than all the math and science and other stuff. Because as an animator, you have to have that great knowledge of everything that's come before you and all the cartoons. So, in a way, it was more important for me, more importante to me to do my homework in that and watch all those great cartoons and go out and figuring in my life. When it was time for me to go to university, I went to a regular university, the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and I majored in English, because I didn't think I would go into artists and be an art, go into that field. But during my time at Michigan, I thought that I would be like an abogado or a doctor, but I didn't like the classes in that, political science and all the classes like that, I didn't do well in, and I loved my art and film classes. So by the end of my time at Michigan, I started doing more cartoons. I did a cartoon in the newspaper, the school newspaper at Michigan. And then when I graduated, I went back to Michigan's art school for un año. It was there that I took my first class in animation. They had one class in animation, and we did a short film. And that was my entree into animation. And the professor said, if anyone wants to pursue this and go into it, the place to go to is called CalArts. And that is a school that was founded by Walt Disney to train animators, and that's the place to go to. So I was trying to do other things. My first love was to be a comic strip artist and to do that. And in the course of time, I thought, what about that school? What about that CalArts? So I applied to CalArts, and I promptly did not get in. It's a very tough program to get in. They only accept like 24 students a year. So as soon as I didn't get in, I knew, hey, that's what I want to do. I've got to do that. So a funny story, too, is that my roommate in college was a professional football player. He had been my roommate at Michigan, and he was an All-American at Michigan, and he got drafted by our professional league, the NFL, to play for the Los Angeles Rams. He then got traded to the New York Jets, so his place was sitting vacant in Los Angeles. So he said to me, Robert, why don't you come out to Los Angeles? You can house it for me, and you can stay and try to get into that art school. So that was all I needed. That was my open door to go, to hit the road, and to go into California. The only problem for me is, having grown up in New York, I never learned how to drive a car. I didn't learn how to drive an automobile. So I had to take lessons, learn how to drive, and then I hit the road to go to California. And talk about a long and winding road. It's about 3,000 miles, and when I hit the highway, I had never driven on a highway before, and I made it on that long and winding road to California, and we have the Rocky Mountains here. You have the Andes in South America. We have the Rocky Mountains, and I barely made it off the top of the Rocky Mountains in my beat-up old car, but I made it out to Los Angeles. And I went to CalArts, and I would meet with the dean. Now, I wasn't accepted at this point, and he would look at my artwork, and he would say, no, you're not quite there yet, you're not good enough yet. So I took any odd jobs that I could, and I was always drawing. I was drawing at night, taking all kinds of drawing classes, life drawing classes. The only work I could find in Los Angeles was flipping hamburguesas. I flipped hamburguesas during the day, but always drawing at night. And then after about 4 or 5 months, after meeting with me, he finally said, you know what, Robert, your stuff is good enough. You can be accepted into the department. So I was like, yes, okay, I finally made it into CalArts. But yo tengo one grande problema. Yo no tengo no dinero, right? And CalArts is mucho dinero, very expensive. So I moved back to New York. The road took another winding turn on me, and I took a sharp right turn and went all the way back to Nueva York. I lived with my parents for 2 years, and I worked in Law Street as an abogado assistant, and I just worked lots of hours and saved up money. After 6 meses, I still didn't have enough money to go to CalArts, so I had to delay my acceptance for a whole other year. It was like waiting at a stoplight. It's like when you're frustrated and you want to move forward, but I couldn't. I had to wait a whole other year. So it took me 2 years of saving to finally go out to California, and to finally go out to Cal Arts. I went out to Cal Arts, and Cal Arts, I was in the famous character animation program where all the great animators have gone to. Tim Burton went to that program, John Lasseter, Brad Bird. It's the #1 program for animation. The talent level was incredible, the competitive level very high, and one thing that you'll find, I tell it to the students at ORT and to you guys too, the friendships that you make amongst the other students are friendships that will last a lifetime, and those will be the people that you work with. And it was for me. I went to Cal Arts with Andrew Stanton and Pete Docter, and those are the guys who went on to get me hired at Pixar. So you really want to make those connections in school, because they will last a lifetime. At Cal Arts, they had the best professors too. Our design professor was Michael Giamo, a guy who's a mentor and a friend to this day. Glenn Keane was our animation teacher, if you can believe it. The great Glenn Keane taught animation there every day. And my story teacher was Rob Minkoff, the director of The Lion King. And that began our friendship and relationship that lasts to this day. So, what I would encourage you too is that my mentor and teacher, Michael Giamo, first noticed my talent in story. I thought I would go into animation and be an animator, but he said, Robert, you seem to have a gift for story and a talent for that. He said, I think you should go into that, and that sort of led me into the story department. So I would encourage you in that too, to sort of find your niche if you want to get into animation. If you look at the credits of an animated feature, you watch the credit roll, there's like, stay and watch the credit roll, there's like 400 or 500 names. 400 to 500 people work on an animated film, and there's room for everyone. You have to find your niche and your talent and what you're good at in there. Not everybody animates. Only a couple of dozen people animate, but they also need, background painters, visual development artists, story artists, riggers, lighting TDs. There's a million jobs, in animation besides just straight animation. So you want to sort of find your strength, as I did. My strength was in story, so that's what I went into. The film that you just saw, Simon, was what got me hired by Disney, and I was hired by Disney into their story department in 1988. My first job at Disney, I'm not kidding you, literally, was drawing this guy, Mickey Mouse. My first job at Disney. I worked on a film called Prince and the Pauper, and drew Mickey Mouse for a living every day, and it was just a dream after, watching the cartoons as a kid, and now I'm getting paid to draw Mickey Mouse. I worked on that one Mickey Mouse cartoon, and then we were starting up a new project called Beauty and the Beast, and I worked in the story department on that, and that was an amazing experience. We were back on the main Disney lot working on that, and the talent in the room was just incredible. We had the great songwriters Alan Menken and Howard Ashman all the time playing the music for us and in the rooms, and just an incredible experience to work on that. Film came out, was a huge hit, and that was just a great experience to be a part of that film and draw those characters. From there, I was asked to work on the next project, which was a story. The way that they pitched it was Bambi in Africa. They wanted to do a story about a coming-of-age story about a young lion in Africa. And the funny thing about that is nobody wanted to work on it. All of the great animators begged off the project, and they wanted to work on the next one, which was Pocahontas. They thought, Lion King is not going to go anywhere. Nobody wants to work on that, which shows you a big thing about Hollywood. One of the famous screenwriters in Hollywood is a gentleman by the name of William Goldman, and he wrote a great book about Hollywood called Adventures in the Screen Trade, and he says in Hollywood, nobody knows anything. Nadie sabe nada in Hollywood. And certainly on Lion King, nadie sabe nada. Nobody wanted to work on it. Everybody thought this is going to go nowhere. This is the worst, the dog project of the studio. Shows what everybody knew, right? Pocahontas did okay, but Lion King, was through the roof. And so I was part of that whole resurgence into of Disney animation with Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King. When I had started, sort of the films were not doing as well, but right around the time I started, they did Little Mermaid, Roger Rabbit, and Disney animation is sort of off to the races. Well, from there, some of my friends were going to Hanna-Barbera, which you know from all their TV shows, and Ted Turner had just bought Hanna-Barbera, so I had a bunch of friends from Disney who were going over there. So I went and I worked on a couple of projects there, and I had grown up, like you guys did, watching the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, the Flintstones and the Jetsons, so it was amazing to be in that building where all those great cartoons were made. William Hanna, Joe Barbera were still alive at that point, and we had meetings with them and saw them, so that was amazing to be a part of that. The films we made, unfortunately, were not great films. The Page Master and Cats Don't Dance. So I would say that's sort of a lower moment in the road. That's where the road sort of hits like a lower valley. But what was awaiting me was that a higher road, the road was going to take a slope up because of my CalArts friends, Pete Doctor and Andrew Stanton. I would talk with them on the phone, how are you guys doing, what are you up to? And they would say, we're doing this new project up at Pixar. I know we're just a little small studio, but we have this project going, it's called Toy Story, and we're looking for people to work on it, why don't you come up and interview? So I went up there and I interviewed with John and Joe Ramp and Pete and Andrew, and it didn't look like I would get hired, but then there was an opening a couple months later when Joe Ramp left to go back to Skellington to work on Nightmare Before Christmas. They needed someone to replace Joe, so I replaced Joe as head of story and finished the film out on Toy Story. Pixar, at the time I was started, I think I was something like employee number 150. There weren't many people at Pixar. It was a very untested studio. Disney didn't sort of quite know what to make of them. They were this young studio doing this new art form called computer animation, CGI, and we were very much an untested property. In fact, Ralph Eggleston, the art director of Toy Story, tells a funny story that he was in the meetings with the Disney marketing people. And they were saying, to design the toys and everything for Toy Story. And they told him, the Lion King was up here, the toys went through the roof. But he said, on your film, Toy Story, we see it being down here. We don't think it's going to sell many toys at all. So I think that could sort of fall into the category of nada also, right? So you have a Disney film about toys coming out at Christmas time. You're like, this should be a no-brainer, right? But anyway, worked on that film and was in many story meetings with all the great Pixar story minds on it, worked with these guys. And we were also in many meetings with great Steve Jobs, would be part of our story meetings and give input with his Apple people. Was in many meetings with Steve. He was amazing talent, and as you can imagine, just an amazing, bright, gifted story mind, and contributed greatly to Toy Story and also the next one to come. From Toy Story, I was one of the advanced team to work on the next project, and that was Bichos, Bug's Life. And for that film, we went to the library at Berkeley, checked out books on bugs, read them. Just a tremendous amount of research and homework goes into all these films. It's just like doing your homework, kids. It's about 4 or 5 years on each animated feature, so much goes into it. And on Bug's Life, I got to write some of the screenplay on it and also do storyboards on it, and worked on it for a couple of years. And then from there, the role took another turn too, when I had some friends who had just started at DreamWorks, and they said, we're starting a new project, and it's based on a little children's book, and it's about this guy called Shrek, right here. And again, nobody at DreamWorks wanted to work on Shrek. It was a very untested property, and all the animators didn't want to work on it, but it was a sort of a long and winding road unto itself, and almost got canceled many times. But the film went forward and winds up being their great, franchise. It's amazing. Again, nobody knows anything in Hollywood. Nobody thought that this guy would become anything, and they've done 4 sequels now, and it's their flagship franchise.